The first time I saw Srila Prabhupada was a real eye-opener. Of course, I'd heard about him. I'd seen his picture. I'd seen the devotees on the street, and I'd heard him chanting, and I'd been visiting the temple. You know, I was a rock musician trying to make it in London. I'd gone to London trying to make it as a famous musician. But I kept seeing the devotees everywhere, and I was attracted, started going to the temple. Then 1973, Prabhupada was coming, and for Rath Yatra. So this was the first time I was ever going to see him. So it started at noon at Marble Arch, and I arrived there just a little bit late. The procession had already started, and I went to the front of the procession, and Prabhupada was dancing on the road, surrounded by a circle of devotees. That was in 1973. He was 77 years old. He danced the whole way. It's about a 4 or 5 mile route. He danced the whole way, and I was just standing there watching, and it was like really ecstatic. And sometimes he would stop. He'd dance and he'd get a little further ahead than the cart, which normally happens. Then he'd stop and turn around and look at the cart, and raise his arms up and look at Lord Jagannath. And the police, when they see that the parade was stopped, then they get a little anxiety and they say, "Could you please ask the Swami to, move it on?" "Oh yes, officer," but they never did, And so he danced all the way. That was quite awe-inspiring, just to see a 77-year-old man filled with the ecstasy of Krishna Prema dancing the whole way. So, and then when they arrived at Trafalgar Square, they had a big ceremony, including a wedding, a fire yagya, a whole thing. So that was my first experience with Prabhupada, really grandiose and fantastic. And I remember one day they had a darshan. Everyone was packed into Prabhupada's room. And there were a lot of guests there, and some of them were challenging. And I remember one time they were challenging Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was just sitting there, tolerating it. And I was getting agitated. I was really getting agitated with these people, that they were speaking in a challenging way to Prabhupada. I couldn't control myself. Prabhupada was completely transcendental, but I got upset, and I made some comment, real nasty comment to shut them up. I was trying, because I had some feeling for Prabhupada. Prabhupada just looked at me, very grave, didn't do anything. So those were my first experiences with my spiritual master. That was in London. But I was still a long-haired hippie, so I don't know what he thought of me, I still wanted to make it as a musician, but I'd always be going to the temple. And I remember one time at Berry Place, I was there for Tulsi Puja, and Peter Sellers came in. And he was very famous at the time, and he came in, pranams like this, and he went down on his knees and bowed down to the deities and everything. There's a lot happening in London in those days. So, my most intimate association with Srila Prabhupada was in 1976 in November in Vrindavan. I was traveling with the Southeast Asia Library Party, and with Satyanarayan, and we had gone up to Kashmir, which is a Muslim, 90% Muslim district area. And we were going to the colleges there and the libraries and distributing books. So I found one library, an Oriental library, with an old gentleman there, and I was showing him the books, and he said, "Oh, I think I have these books." I said, "No, it's not possible. It's the first time we've come here." He said, "Let me see." He went back, and he brought out Prabhupada's 3 original Bhagavatams. So I said, "That's fantastic. And now we have, you should take all the rest of them." So he took the whole, all the rest, the whole complete set of Bhagavatams, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Gita, Krishna book, everything. So that was really nice. So he said that the author had come there personally. So that was far out. Nobody knew that Prabhupada had gone to Kashmir. So on our way back, driving back through the Himalayas, we passed an apiary where they had beehives and everything. And we were thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great to get Prabhupada some real Himalayan honey, the real thing. So we got a big bottle like that. And we knew that Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. So we wanted just to go straight back to Vrindavan and tell him that we were preaching in Kashmir and we'd distributed books, in the Muslim areas, and the Muslim colleges had taken it and like that. So we arrived in Vrindavan, and Jagadish was Prabhupada's secretary at the time, and he knew me and Satyanarayan from Canada, in Toronto. He knew me, and he knew Satyanarayan from New York. So he said, "Okay, I'll try and arrange it." And then he came out a few minutes later and says, "Yes, Prabhupada will see you." So we came in, And Prabhupada was sitting with Gopal Krishna, and he was speaking to an Indian gentleman. And when we came in, he turned around and went like this and said, "Here are two very nice boys." So we came in, and we sat down, and Jagadish introduced us. And Satyanarayan spoke first and explained we'd been in Kashmir, and we preached and everything like this. We were the library party, and he was very pleased. We were distributing his books. And then his eyes opened really wide when he heard we were in Kashmir. He says, Kashmir. I went to Kashmir. And he said, "Do you remember when you come over the crest of the hill and you see the Kashmir Valley?" "Yes, Prabhupada, we saw it." And he said, "Yes, I distributed my books there." So then I spoke up. I said, "Srila Prabhupada, I met that gentleman. He took your first 3 volumes. And then I distributed, after that, he took the whole set of your books, standing order." So that was nice to connect with Srila Prabhupada. So he was reminiscing about that. We spoke for about 5-10 minutes. And then what really stuck in my mind was just before we left, he looked me right, he was speaking about preaching and everything, the importance of preaching. Then he looked me right in the eye and he said, "So, wherever you go and whoever you meet, just tell them about Krishna. And in this way, you become Guru by Lord Chaitanya's order." And that really left a big, he was looking right at me. So when I left there, I thought, wow, if I don't tell people about Krishna, I'm in Maya, total Maya. So I thought, this is my mission. And we gave Prabhupada the bottle of honey, which he graciously accepted. And then Palika, who was his cook, she told us later that every morning Prabhupada used to like to have a little bit of that honey with his breakfast. So that was very nice. It was always wonderful to travel with Srila Prabhupada in an airplane. And the first time Srila Prabhupada went to Australia to bring the deities there, Bhagavan Prabhu was carrying one of the deities with him, with Srila Prabhupada. So they had packed their lunch. So when after the plane had taken off and it was time to take prasadam, they unfolded everything and Prabhupada served out and everyone was taking prasadam. And then when they finished, Prabhupada rinsed his mouth and washed his hands. And then he took out a toothpick and he started doing like this, cleaning his teeth. So Bhagavan was thinking, oh, this is what you do. You have to clean your mouth after you eat. So he goes down in his bag and he pulls out a toothbrush and toothpaste. Prabhupada says, "What you were doing?" "Well, I'm going to brush my teeth, Srila Prabhupada. I'm going to clean my teeth." He says, "That you do before you take prasad. After prasad, you use a toothpick. Because those little pieces in your mouth, that's also prasadam." So ever since then, I always got toothpicks and I was always picking my teeth. Gargamuni told Srila Prabhupada that 2 of his men were distributing books. He did, the library parties, all the universities in Indonesia, Muslim country. And there were other devotees in Muslim countries at that time also. Padmapani and Tribhuvanath were in the Middle East, like that. So then Prabhupada was so pleased that devotees were going to preach in the Muslim countries. And he told Gargamuni, and Gargamuni told us, Prabhupada said, "Whoever preaches in the Muslim countries, I take the dust from their feet, put it on my head." So when he told us that, we were in ecstasy. So that was really wonderful. And it was actually, after we did, in Indonesia, we were first on the island of Java, and then from there we went to Bali. We did the libraries in Bali. And it was in Bali that I found out that Prabhupada had left the planet. That morning, because everywhere we went to, we'd divide up the colleges. So Satyanarayan went off to his college, and I was ready to go off to my college. But I just thought I'd call into Jakarta. There was one lady there, Arvindakshi Devi. She was acting as our secretary. And so I called in just to find out how things were going. The books were being sent out and this and that, Then she said, "Have you heard the news?" I said, "No. What? You didn't know?" "I didn't know." She said, "Prabhupada left the planet." I was shocked. I didn't know. She said, "I just heard from the devotees in Singapore." So I hung up the phone. I didn't know what to do. But I thought Prabhupada would want me to go and preach in his college. So I drove up there. It was on the other end of Bali. You have to go all the way through to the other side. It's a small island, but so I got there. This was amazing. I arrived in the college, met the librarian, and got the 2 standing orders. And then as I came out, I met, what was his name? He was the Minister of Culture in Jakarta, who we'd met about a month earlier trying to distribute the books to the library in the cultural ministry. I forget his name now. Anyway, he'll come back. So I met him at the college, just walking down the hall. And he said to me, "Have you heard about your Guru Maharaj?" And I said, "Yes, I did. Thank you." And I was amazed. Even in Bali, in this little village, in this small town, and everybody knew Prabhupada had left the planet. I was amazed. So I drove down to meet Satyanarayan, the other side of the island, and he hadn't heard. So I had to break the news to him. And we were in our room, and I told him, and immediately he broke down and just sobbed uncontrollably, crying and crying. And, you know, I had this realization that I'm so stone-hearted. You know, I hadn't broken down and sobbed. I mean, I was sad, and tears came to my eyes. But I just saw that Satyanarayan had so much love for Prabhupada. He was crying and sobbing. I just really respected him, and I felt if only I could have such a relationship. You know, if only I could have felt that. So that was my experience of Prabhupada leaving the planet. After Prabhupada had left, devotees were collecting memories of Srila Prabhupada, and no one had gone to see his godbrother, Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor. So I decided to go to see Dr. Kapoor when I was in Vrindavan one time and ask him about his memories of Srila Prabhupada. And he gave me a very beautiful story. He knew Srila Prabhupada when he was uninitiated, Abhay Babu, who owned the Day's Pharmacy in Allahabad. And he was a graduate student at the university there, and he had met his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and taken initiation from him. And he was the first non-Bengali to do that. So when Prabhupada moved there, one day in the pharmacy, a sannyasi walked in, isn't it, Tirtha Maharaj, and he said, "Oh, we have heard your name." Because Prabhupada had met him in Calcutta, and he'd been studying the books, and you know, he was already a devotee, but not initiated. "And we've heard your name. We want to establish a mutt here. Will you help us?" So Prabhupada was very thrilled to help. So gradually the mutt was started, and Prabhupada used to come and play, you know, and chant and play mridanga and chant bhajans and everything, and everyone really liked him, and he enjoyed being in their association. So the young Adi Keshava Das, Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor, Prabhupada especially was very warm to him, and he said, because I was the only non-Bengali there. So the acquaintance turned into friendship, and friendship turned into brotherhood. And he was 13 years younger than Prabhupada, but he used to come all the time to the pharmacy and to ask questions, discuss Krishna Katha, like that, and they became really close. So one day when he came, Prabhupada handed him a vial. He said, "Here, take this vial, this tonic. This would be very good for your health." So Dr. Kapoor said, "Yes, I will take this, thank you very much. But why you don't give me the tonic that you're taking?" So Prabhupada said, "Well, what tonic is that?" He said, "You know, the tonic of Krishna Prema." Prabhupada laughed. He said, "Well, I don't have that tonic, but I do know the formula." And Dr. Kapoor said, "Well, if it's not a secret, perhaps you can share it with me." He said, "Yes, I can share it with you. It is not a secret. The formula is Trinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Sahishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtanaya Sadahari, and I shall spread it the whole world over." So Trinadapi Sunichena, more humble than the grass. Taroriva Sahishnana, more tolerant than the tree. Amanina Manadena, not desiring any respect for myself, but desiring to give all respect to others. Kirtaniya Sadahari, in such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So at the time, Dr. Kapoor thought he was just making a casual pronouncement. But he told me, now that I look back over the years, I realize that even at that time, He had a plan like that. He was thinking like that. I shall spread it the whole world over. So I was thinking how Prabhupada said this is the formula to get Krishna Prem. And Srila Prabhupada was the embodiment of that verse. So I want to give some of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes to show how he embodied that verse. So, Trinadapi Sinechena, more humble than the grass. This is a pastime that Srila Prabhupada performed in New York in July 1972. It was just around it was actually the July 4th holiday weekend. And devotees had come from all over the East Coast, from far south as Miami, as far north as Montreal and Toronto, as far west as Chicago and St. Louis. And there were thousands of devotees in the New York Temple. And then when Prabhupada was to leave, so many devotees drove him to the airport. And they went with him into the departure lounge. You just see him to the last second. So the departure lounge was filled with devotees. Now, the airport officials had a problem because there was no room for the passengers who were booked on the plane to come into the departure lounge. So one of the officials looked around and spotted Rabindra Sarup, who was kind of a tall person, and explained the situation to him and asked him if he could ask your people to kindly leave so that persons who are on the plane can come in to the departure lounge and to board their flight. So he said, okay. He had understood the situation and went and spoke to a couple of devotees, but no one was having any of that. I'm not leaving, no way. Then he realized that he's not going to get anywhere. Now, Rupanuga had just taken sannyas in May of that year, so he was a new sannyasi and he was a GBC. So Rabindra approached Rupanuga and explained the situation to Rupanuga and asked him if he could take care of it. So Rupanuga immediately, okay, done. So he got up one of the chairs and he said, attention all devotees. We now have to leave the departure lounge to make room for the incoming passengers. So all devotees, please get up and leave the departure lounge. No one did anything. Everyone just sat there, looked at him, except for one person, Srila Prabhupada. He got up and started to walk out. And Rupanuga said, no, not you, Srila Prabhupada. He was so humble. When he heard that a devotee should get up and leave, he got up to leave. And no one else did. So this is the symptom of humility, more humble than the grass. He was the only humble Vaishnava in that assembly. Taroriva Sihishnuda, more tolerant than the tree. This pastime took place in 1975 when Prabhupada was going for the first time to South Africa after he had been in Kenya. And he was flying on the plane, and on that plane was the South African football team who had just played in Kenya. So they were a rowdy bunch, and they'd won the match, and they were kind of, happy and upbeat. So after the plane took off, the stewardesses came around, they were serving drinks, and these guys were taking their drinks and getting a little high and a little rowdy, lighting up cigarettes. Now, it's a non-smoking cabin that they were in. So Pushta Krishna, who was Prabhupada's secretary, was sitting next to Prabhupada, Pushta Krishna Maharaj at that time. He got a little disturbed. This is not very nice. Why Prabhupada should be subjected to this? So he pressed the call button to call for the stewardess. And she came and he explained very nicely, this is the non-smoking area, and could you please ask them to extinguish their cigarettes? So she agreed. She asked these football players to extinguish their cigarettes, which they did do. Then she left. But after a few minutes, they lit up again because they were really drunk. So now, Pushta Krishna could see that he wasn't going to get anywhere with the stewardess. So he decided he was going to take matters into his own hands. So he got up, and he was going to get heavy with these guys. And Srila Prabhupada said, oh, where you were going? She said, well, they're smoking, Srila Prabhupada. Sit down. And then Srila Prabhupada looked him right in the eye and said, what is the difference between us and them if we cannot tolerate? So Prabhupada tolerated the cigarette smoke and the rowdiness and everything. He was undisturbed. And he said, what is the difference between us and them if we cannot tolerate? So the pure devotee, the Vaishnava, he exemplifies this. Taroriva Sahishnura, more tolerant than the tree. And then Amanina Manadena, not desiring any respect for himself or any honor, but desiring to give all respect and honor to others. So pastime, this was just end of 1975 and 76. I think it was January 76. I had arrived in Bombay December 75. And at that time, the Bombay temple was just a hole in the ground with the foundation. And Prabhupada's rooms at that time was at the back of the property, which are now the BBT building. So Prabhupada had come early January 76, I believe, sometime in January. And he wanted to really get this project moving. So the next morning after breakfast prasadam, he had a big meeting in his rooms with all the people who were involved in doing this project, and the sannyasi, the GBC temple president, all the people, everybody. So they're in the room having this big important meeting. Then up the stairs comes the cleaning lady, a Bungi lady from the Bungi colony, not far from the temple. And she has her little balti, the wooden bucket, and her daru, the straw broom, because she comes up every day and cleans the rooms. So she comes up to the top of the landing, and the door is slightly ajar. So she looks through and she sees Prabhupada there speaking, and all the devotees and the architects and the contractors and everything. So she can't go in, but she can't not do her service. She can't go down and forget about it, because that 1 rupee feeds her children. She needs it, so she doesn't know what to do. So she's just standing there. Meanwhile, Prabhupada's speaking, and as he turns his head to the right, he sees through the door that's ajar, he sees the cleaning lady standing there. So immediately he stops the discussion. He says, now we have to stop. The cleaning lady has come. When it's her time to clean, then she's the authority here. Everyone has their area of authority. And when it's her time to clean, she's the authority. So we have to get up and leave. So they got up and leave. So the Jagat Guru recognized the authority of that cleaning lady. Amanina amanadena, giving all respect to others and not desiring any for himself. In this way, kirtaniya sadahari, one is able to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, which we always saw. Srila Prabhupada always chanting the holy name of the Lord constantly. So here we see that Prabhupada was the embodiment, the personification of that verse, which he said many years back, he had explained to his godbrother that this was the formula to get Krishna praying. And he would spread it the whole world over, and he was the embodiment of that. Jai Anilo Premadana Krishna Kirtana Ganana Once in a morning walk, Prabhupada was, this was in America, Prabhupada was discussing the Apichet Sudarachato Bhajate Mamananya Bhak, that verse, that if one is rightly situated in devotional service, even if he falls down and commits even a heinous fall down, he's still considered saintly if he's rightly situated and carries on his devotional service. So Prabhupada was speaking about that. And then one devotee raised the point, Srila Prabhupada, you're saying that if it's an accidental fall down, then Krishna considers him saintly. But if it's premeditated, then that's a different situation. Then we're sinning in knowledge. So how do we know if the fall down is accidental? So Prabhupada, he was walking and he stopped for about 30 seconds, and then he said, if he comes back, it was accidental. That was his answer. And how I understood it was that if someone bloops and is gone and comes back 10, 15, 20 years later, if he comes back and takes up devotional service again, then Prabhupada will consider it was an accidental fall down. And to me, that just showed the ocean of compassion that Srila Prabhupada was. He had so much mercy, so much compassion, that someone would fall down, fall away completely, but if he would come back, Prabhupada would consider that all those years in Maya was simply an accidental fall down. such a compassion. So that really hit home. I was in Mayapur in 1976, and in those days there was just two buildings. There was the temple building, and then what we called the long building. Now they have names like Shankha, Padma, Gadda, and all these, but I still know them as the long building. So Prabhupada was going through for a walk around the grounds. And in those days, when I first came there were rooms along the boundary wall, and some of the devotees stayed there because the long building hadn't been finished. And as you came towards the Prasadam hall, they had some toilets that was used by the Bengalis. So Prabhupada's on a walk, and all the senior devotees are there, Bhavananda and Jayapataka, and he comes up, and this toilet, every time I passed that toilet, it was disgusting because there was stool everywhere. It was never clean. So Prabhupada sees this, and he says, "What is this? It's filthy." So then Bhavananda says, "Oh, this is not our toilet, Srila Prabhupada. This is the Bengali toilets they are using." So Prabhupada says, "Why is not clean? Why you are not cleaning? You're not cleaning because it does not disturb you. If you were in the mode of goodness, you could not tolerate this, and immediately you'd be clean. But you're in the mode of ignorance, and you're in harmony with this mode of ignorance, and that's why it's things like this." So he immediately ordered it cleaned up. So, he was explaining that if you're at the same guna, then you're in harmony with that guna. So if you're in the mode of ignorance, you come across something in the mode of ignorance, it doesn't disturb you, and it just stays like that. But if you're in the mode of goodness, then the mode of ignorance and passion, it disturbs you, and you can't tolerate that, and so you want to bring it to a higher level. So he was chastising devotees that they were in the mode of ignorance because they didn't clean up the stool. Didn't disturb them, and they left it like that. So in 1976, for the festival in Mayapur, all the devotees came first to Calcutta. And we were sitting out in the balcony at 3 Albert Road, taking breakfast prasadam. And we noticed there's 3 musicians walking along. One had a harmonium strapped over his shoulder, another one had a mridanga, and the third one had kartals. They were just walking along. But they looked up and saw all the Western devotees there, so they stopped and started chanting Hare Krishna. I thought it was pretty attractive. Some devotees liked it, but others were complaining and thinking that this is not proper. They're just singing for money. They're professionals, and they didn't like it at all. Then all of a sudden, someone comes out of Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada was there, walks downstairs, and walks over to these musicians and gives them a rupee. So they smile, they thank him, and he leaves, and they stop and they go. So then that was a big controversy. All the devotees were saying, "What happened? Why they gave money, Krishna's money, to these professional musicians?" So they asked the devotee why he did that. He said, "Well, Prabhupada gave me a rupee, he told me to give it to them." "Why did he do that?" "I don't know." So they asked him to please find out. So he went in and asked Srila Prabhupada. He said, "Srila Prabhupada, the devotees are wondering why we gave Krishna's money to these professional musicians." And Srila Prabhupada said, "We've enjoyed their music, therefore we are indebted to them. We give a rupee, clear the debt." And when I told this story to one Indian Mataji devotee, she said, "Ah, yes, my mother always taught us that." And thereafter, whenever I was traveling in India, we traveled in the trains, a lot of times singers come by and everything. So I would always pull out a rupee and pay them because I didn't want to be indebted because I enjoyed the music. But if someone came by who didn't have any talent, I wouldn't give them anything. I didn't feel indebted because I didn't enjoy it. They were just bothering me. In 1976, that same year, Bhaktivilas Tirtha Maharaj, godbrother of Srila Prabhupada, from the Chaitanya Mat, passed away. Prabhupada heard the news when he was in Vrindavan. Several devotees were in his rooms at the time when he got the news. So then Prabhupada said, Bhaktivilas Tirtha, now he is gone. But he has gone back to Godhead. So Brahmananda was very surprised. He said, "But Srila Prabhupada, how is that possible? He gave you so much trouble. He never helped you. He created that whole dispute that forced a lawsuit for 40 years in the Gaudiya Math and split up Bhaktisiddhanta's mission. How can you say That he went back to Godhead. I don't understand. And Prabhupada said, he went back to Godhead because my Guru Maharaj accepted his service. And from that I understood that if we please the Guru and he accepts our service, then even though we may not be qualified, then Krishna, because we've pleased the pure devotee, will give us that opportunity to go back home, back to Godhead. And because Bhaktivilas Tirtha, whatever good he did, that Bhaktisiddhanta accepted his service, there was also many things that were causing a great disturbance, both through the Gaudiya Math, and he didn't help Prabhupada at all when Prabhupada requested his help on many occasions. So this is a very important lesson, I thought. We really have to please the Guru and that he accepts our service.
Okay, Hare Krishna devotees. So we heard so nice lecture of Prabhuji. So now we will see some of his glories and contributions. So I was also very much uh, moved by hearing Prabhuji's lecture, because many pastimes he told of Srila Prabhupada, especially the pastime of that depicting his quality of Trinadapi Sunichena, Taroripa Eva Sahishnuna, and the compassionate pastime which he told. So it was very nice lecture. I hope all the devotees have learned many things from this. So we will see a brief introduction about Prabhuji. So actually Prabhuji is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he is known for his musical talent and his ecstatic kirtans which he do. So even in I was also searching in this ISKCON Desire Tree and YouTube. So there are many kirtans of Prabhuji also. So devotees can watch in that. So Prabhuji is known for his deep devotion and musical talent. So I think in second video which we saw, so Prabhuji was telling about his musical experiences also. And also he afterwards we'll see that he learned Bengali as well, and then he was known for uh, creating various Bengali, I mean, inculcating Bengali in his kirtan styles as well. So he was known for helping to revive and share the traditional art of Raga Kirtan. So this was his uh, special thing about Prabhuji. So now coming to his early life and where he was born and what was his background. So Prabhuji was born in London, and he was raised in Canada, in Winnipeg. And yeah, as I already told, that he was a musician before. So in his early career, before joining ISKCON also, he was a guitarist in this band, blues band, and he was a singer also. Uh, and through his kirtans, through his musical talent, he has fascinated. Means he has great fascinate. Already had great fascination for Indian spirituality and culture before he joined our movement as well. So he came to Krishna consciousness in the year 1970 in London, and he was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in the year 1975. Also, he was sent by Srila Prabhupada to India for helping in preaching and also his personal cultivation. So, talking about some of his uh, absorption. So, Prabhuji traveled extensively across India and Southeast Asia. Then, as I already told, he became fluent in Bengali while his traveling, and inspired by the traditional Raga Kirtan during a boat trip in Bangladesh. So he got very much inspired by that in 1978. So he developed a desire to make these Raga Kirtans in his Kirtan program as well. Then he was committed to reviving and spreading this ancient musical art. So this was a little bit about his absorption and his we can say musical talent. Now coming to some of his great services and contributions in ISKCON. So Prabhuji was a kirtan preacher actually. Through kirtan he used to preach. So Prabhuji is known worldwide for his soul-stirring kirtans. So I will request devotees also. Maybe if we have time, then we can, in the end, we can see a little clip of Prabhuji's kirtan. But you can also see in YouTube there are many kirtans, and in ISKCON Desire Tree also you can see. Then he was the pioneer of Raga Kirtan. So this was a special contribution of Prabhuji that when he learned Bengali, so he brought traditional Bengali Raga Kirtan. Also, he brought into the global stage. So this was a special contribution, and he blended it with the contemporary elements, which he already learned while in his profession. So this was a special contribution of Prabhupada. He pioneered Raga Kirtan. Then, talking about his global outreach, he has performed and taught Bhakti Yoga and Kirtan in more than 60 countries. And through his mesmerizing Kirtan, he have touched hearts of many people. Musical production, he have released many influential devotional music albums like The Way of Love, Charan Kamal, then Kirtan Ras and Shri Krishna Divya Dham. So these are some of his musical albums. So devotees can also search in internet. There are these albums are available. Then uh, yeah. So while living in Bangladesh, he absorbed himself in the local devotional traditions, and he learned Bengali fluently as well and integrated authentic cultural elements into his musical service. So since he was having this talent of music, so he dovetailed it by learning Bengali and by inculcating all the Bengali raga kirtan techniques in his service and in his talent, and then he bridged this cultural thing also, which he learned in India. So this was a very nice contribution of Prabhuji. After this, then he was a teacher and mentor also. So he leads many workshops, retreats, and kirtan festivals, mentoring a new generation of kirtaniya especially and spiritual artists. So Prabhuji is kirtan teacher and mentor also. Talking about his global outreach, we just saw it in a nutshell, but now we'll see in detail. So he taught Bhakti Yoga in more than 64 countries, and he leads workshops, festivals, retreats, and international tours. He is revered for his soulful and energizing kirtans, which we are hearing since many slides. So, and he shares mantra meditation and Vedic wisdom through his music. So in the two lectures which we saw, okay, Prabhuji didn't spoke much about his kirtan, but especially if we can hear some of his kirtan and lectures, then maybe we can see more of his preaching through kirtan technique also. So this was his global outreach. Yeah, so now this is the pastime which Prabhuji also narrated in his first video. I think devotees will remember this. So I'm just reading it, and then devotees can relish it. So this is a pastime of Prabhuji's uh, means personal experience with Srila Prabhupada in London. So once in London, a lot of guests packed into Prabhupada's room for darshan. Some of them were challenging Prabhupada, but he was tolerating it. He was completely transcendental. However, their challenging tone was agitating and upsetting me. Since I had some feeling for Prabhupada, I couldn't control myself, and I made some nasty comment to shut them up. Prabhupada looked at me gravely. he didn't do anything. I was still a long-haired hippie who wanted to make it as a musician. So I don't know what he thought. That was one of my first experiences with my spiritual master. I was still going to the Beauty Palace temple regularly. Once Peter Sellers, who was very famous at that time, came for Tulsi Puja, offered his pranams and bowed down on his knees to the deities. A lot happened in London in those days. So this is one of the pastime which Prabhuji shared, and he relishes it. This was one personal contact with Srila Prabhupada which he had. And other than this, many pastimes Prabhuji shared in this lecture as well. I think devotees will uh, relish them, and they could learn so many qualities. They could relish so many qualities of Srila Prabhupada, which Prabhuji mentioned. So this was a short introduction about Prabhuji. So I thank Krishna Kirtan Prabhu for giving me this opportunity. So thank you so much, Prabhu. His Grace vaiyasaki Prabhuji ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.